Okay, so we'd like to welcome everyone out today to our webinar, which is Letting Go of Trauma. And we're going to be talking a lot about information that maybe you do or do not know, so that you can kind of see where you're at and make some decisions on how you want to help yourself. Because with trauma, it can cover a lot of different areas for a lot of different people. So what I'm going to do is give you a definition of what the dictionary says trauma is, so that you make sure you can clarify that. It's defined in the dictionary as a deep, distressing, or disturbing experience. So the American Psychiatric Association defines PTSD as a person that has either experienced or witnessed an event or events that involve actual or threatened death, serious injury to self or others, and which have involved fear, helplessness, and horror. So how many of you have experienced one of those? I think we can safely say that most of us have experienced that, one of those. So there's a study, and you may have actually heard of it. It's called the ACE study, and it's where they really did an in-depth study of people who actually experienced childhood trauma. And they said that there's 5 personal traumas that if you've experienced this in childhood, it is a trauma, such as physical abuse, verbal abuse, sexual abuse, physical neglect, and emotional neglect. They also said there's 5 other areas that are related to family members that are still a trauma to a child. And that is a parent who's an alcoholic, a mother who's a victim of domestic violence, a family member in jail, family member who has mental illness, and a disappearance of a parent through divorce or death. So what happens is when we have the brain of a person who has had a lot of traumatic events, it actually functions differently. So if a child has had repeated trauma, their brain becomes overstimulated. And so the hippocampus registers memories of danger and trauma. So when it gets too flooded in an area, it just no longer functions properly. And they actually did a research with chronic stress, and it said over time, it actually begins to disintegrate. So when the amygdala begins to experience that fight or flight response, which we all know, we've all had it, on a regular basis, it becomes overly sensitive. So between the hippocampus and the actual becoming in this fight or flight mode, and then we have the hippocampus that's overcompensating, and the amygdala is overreacting, this begins to start a process in the mind that begins to cause problems later on because it's just too much. So let me give you an example of what I mean. So if your hippocampus and your amygdala has been overstimulated for long periods of time, your brain begins to generalize. And what I mean by generalizing is, let's say that you have a little fear, and this fear is like, I don't want to talk in front of a class. And over time, your brain just begins to build it, and generalize it to every area where now you can't even go into social places. Like social anything is you're scared of it. And it doesn't make any sense, but it started here, and the brain just kind of generalized it to it. Keep that point in mind, because we're going to go back to that point a little bit later on about the brain generalizing. So there was a study that was done at Harvard and Rockefeller University, and they showed that when a child is overloaded with stress hormones and is constantly in that fight or flight mode, they can't learn at school. They have trouble trusting adults. They have anxiety. No, they can't sleep. They're over compliant. They can be like angry or rebellious. They can be numb and seem like they're not even there. They may have trouble handling their emotions. Have you ever heard, or maybe you experienced that your child is, or you had stomach aches and headaches all the time? Maybe there's self-destructive behavior. They become loners. And I'm sure this isn't a surprise to anybody. they need to find some kind of relief, some kind of help. So they are very high risk of turning to drugs, alcohol, sex, eating, that kind of thing. So what I wanted to do, you don't have to give me the answers, but we're going to take a little test. And hopefully you guys have a little piece of paper and a pen, and all you have to do is mark down yes and count them up at the end of this. So what this is, it is called the ACE study. And the ACE study was based on asking specific questions so you can find out where you are with the traumatic events. So if everybody's ready, I'm going to go ahead and ask you questions, and just if it's yes, you're going to enter 1. Okay. Did a parent, if everybody can mute their microphone, that would be good, because I'm hearing static. Did a parent or other adult in your household often or very often swear at you, insult you, put you down, or humiliate you, or act in any way that made you afraid that you might be physically hurt? If that's yes, I want you to put down a number 1. Okay, second question. Did a parent or other adults in the household often or very often push, grab, slap, or throw something at you, or even hit you so hard that you had marks and you were injured? If yes, enter 1. Okay. Did an adult or person at least 5 years older than you ever touch or fondle you, or have you touch their body in a sexual way, or attempt or actually have oral, anal, or vaginal intercourse with you? If yes, put 1. Did you often or very often feel that no one in your family loved you or thought you were very important or special, or your family didn't look out for each other, feel close to each other, or support each other? If the answer is yes, put a number 1. Did you often or very often feel that you didn't have enough to eat, had dirty clothes to wear, had no one to protect you, or your parents were too drunk or high to take care of you or to take you to the doctor if you needed it? If yes, put number 1. Were your parents ever separated or divorced? If yes, enter 1. Was your mother or stepmother often very pushed, grabbed, slapped, or had something thrown at her? Or sometimes often or very often kicked, bitten, hit with a fist, or hit with something hard? Or ever repeatedly hit over at least a few minutes or threatened with a gun or knife? If yes, put 1. Did you live with anybody who was a problem drinker or an alcoholic or used street drugs? If yes, enter 1. Was a household member depressed or mentally ill, or did a household member attempt suicide? If yes, enter 1. Did a household member go to prison? If yes, enter 1. Okay, so what I want you to do is add them up. And as you add them up, I'm going to show you a few statistics and you don't have to answer where you're at, but this is just count them up, and then look at your own where you stand on this. I'm going to show you something that's, hold on a second, I'll get it real quick. Okay, can everybody see that? Do you guys see the chart? Hopefully. Let's see. Can somebody shake their head if they see the chart? Okay, perfect. Okay, so basically what I wanted to show you is whatever you rated for your numbers, I want you to look for them on the screen. If you had 4 above, you said yes to 4 more of those questions, you're more in the higher risk of becoming addicted to alcohol. If you rate, you can see your numbers on 3 to 4. The childhood experiences underlying chronic depression, the red is for men, the yellow is for women. You can see how high your percentage of possibility that happening with you if you've had, well, we'll just say 3 or 4 more of these yeses. Then if you look down here, you can see that there's almost, this is interesting to me, it's prescription drugs that they're the antidepressants for prescriptions. Literally, when you get 50 years older, it is almost at 100%. People are taking 100 antidepressant prescription medication. That's incredible. So childhood trauma really does affect you. So then if you look over here, I don't know if you can see my hand, but you'll see that there's a risk of, oops, sorry, a risk of perpetrating the domestic violence is quite high as well. Okay, and then if we look down here, you can see the liver disease is very high, and then more people are more apt to smoke. This is also very interesting too, is the childhood experiences that if you've had certain experiences as a child, you are more apt to have a possibility of being raped. If you have had 4 or more traumas, your likelihood of being raped at some point later on is very high. Also the suicide attempts, if you have 4 or more traumas when you grow up. And then if you look down here, if you've had intercourse by 15, you can see how high these things are when there's been a certain amount of trauma, teen pregnancy, that kind of thing. And then we also have the indicators of work problems. So if you've had a lot of trauma, at some point, it really could cause a lot of problems with working. So you could miss more than 2 days a month. You could have serious financial problems, serious problems performing a job. And so I thought that was like super interesting. Let me get back to here. So anyway, that was interesting. And I felt like if you guys kind of knew where you were at on the trauma scale, as we continue to talk a little bit more, that might help you out. So the problems with trauma can have like a lot of different effects. We all know that. But there's a couple things that happen when you have childhood trauma. And it just truly depends on what kind of trauma you've had. Some children learn to suppress the events and pretend like they've never happened. And the reason why they do that is because they literally need to in order to survive the event. So the brain is incredible, and it knows how to protect us as a human being. But some events are just way too heavy, way too much for a child to experience. So they learn to basically compartmentalize and put it in a separate part of their brain. And when they do that, the brain kind of closes it off. So the child can just function as if something is normal, even though nothing's normal about the situation. I myself did that. I was about 30 years old, and until I was 30 years old, I told myself, oh, I had the greatest life. It was so good. I just love my family. Everything is so fantastic. And then I decided, things are just not right here. Like, I don't feel right. Things are not right. So when I started going to therapy, and it was like, holy crap, all this stuff started to come out of memories. And it was more memories, and it was more memories, and it was more memories. And it just seemed like for me, it would last forever, but that's not the case for everybody. So that's a really good example of how we can suppress something in order to survive. And I had to, because if I didn't, I wouldn't have lived for sure. And so it's a great thing our brain can do it. But at the same time, there's going to come a day when the brain is not going to be able to do that, because the membrane walls start to break down and our memories start to come back. Maybe you guys have heard of like some people having just like memories of flashbacks, or they could have memory sensations or smells, or they could have anxiety or depression or chronic illness. Well, all of these things that are coming up, it's like our brain telling us, you know what, it's time to check this out. It's time, you got to deal with this. And sometimes, it can come up in really horrible ways because it may not even show up as far as memories, but it might just show up that we're really sick, or that we're really, we have all those smells we can't stand. And I'll give you an example of the smells. I had a client who came in. She had absolutely chemical sensitivity, chronic fatigue, fibromyalgia, the whole thing. And she literally, when she came to my office, she couldn't even hug me. She said, you can't, I use a lot of tapping, and she said, you can't tap me, don't touch me, stay away from me. She's like, can you make sure your office doesn't have any smells? So we started working, and this was over probably about 4 sessions or something. And what came to find out is all the things that she was so sensitive to smell was what it boiled down to is she had suppressed some memories of her dad sexually abusing her, and she was in the garage. Her dad was a mechanic, and in the garage where he was a mechanic, there was all these really, really strong smells, and those were exactly the same smells that she could not be near, couldn't stand. And then we're going to go back to what I shared with the brain generalizing. When your brain generalizes, not only was it just a few smells that her brain had recorded when this abuse was going on, but see, what the brain did was, I'm not going to let you remember the abuse, but you're going to remember these smells. And these smells, if they come near you, you better get the heck away from them because they are danger. Are the smells dangerous? No. But what the brain connected was the smell, dad, abuse. It generalized all this stuff, and all she could handle is, I can't stand smells. It's a really, really good example of how that's what our mind does. It's like if you have something that is very severe, that is a disease of some kind, or the fibromyalgia, the chronic fatigue, there's things behind that, and it's important to understand and find out what's behind it. Because when you find out what's behind it, I've seen this over and over and over again, the symptoms go away. Because if you're sick and you don't feel good, those are symptoms of something. I don't know what it is. You may not know what it is, but it's something you can figure out. And so that's kind of when you understand how the brain works. The brain, basically, if you understand it, is a recorder. And so if it records everything, and that means the smells, the taste, the touch, the visual, the feelings of it, what you hear, and it starts like really from the beginning of, I'm going to say this, you don't have to believe it, but in the womb, all the way until the day you die. And so it's just a recorder, and it's got all these memories, and it can process so many hundreds of millions of bits of information, the unconscious, at one time. And so if you have memories stored of trauma, and not all trauma has to be abuse. I mean, it can be accidents, it can be a divorce, a breakup of some kind of, relationship, grief and loss. So there's lots of areas of this. So the brain, if you understand, has recorded every piece of that. Well, this is what it creates from. And so what I like to tell my clients is that you must understand what the unconscious mind does, how it works, and then just to let you know, the good news is that you literally can change it. So you can change those horrible, whatever happened to you, any traumatic events. You can literally change your brain. And the reason why is our brain is rewirable. And it's called, and I'm sure everybody's heard of this, neuroplasticity. So when your brain, it has the ability to actually restructure itself by forming neural connections. So it's really pliable. So when we go in with the different techniques that we'll get to later, you literally can change what happened. And so I'm just going to ask you guys, you don't have to answer out loud, but just think about it. If we went in and let's just say we had, something that we lived every day, several times a week, some kind of abuse. It was just going on forever, right? So we've got 1 million of these. So when you want to go in and you want to change them, do you have to change every 1 million of them? No, you do not. But you may have to change several. And when you start to change the different memories by rewiring what it's holding and re-imprinting something new, your brain actually does it automatically. So it's not something somebody has to do it for you. Your brain will just do it. You begin to create differently. And so what I love to say is, if you think about this for a second, if your brain can have all this crap and it keeps creating crap for you, and you keep having drama and keep having this happen and that happen, and it happens over and over, and you're like, why does this happen over and over? Why do I keep having these people in my life that keep doing these same things I hate? Why does this happen over and over? This is why. It's because your brain is literally it's just like a pattern machine. It's a generalizing machine over and over and over. This is what I've got. We got to go back and change what has happened. And, there's many, many ways. And on the summit, a lot of people talked about the different ways that we can change our mind and change our brain. But the most important thing to do is that the re-imprinting is what we can do to make it happy memories. And as we do that, the happy memories, if we start replacing all the bad things that happen and take the charge out of it, what I mean is, if mom was yelling at you in the kitchen, and every time you think about that, it just gets you so upset, and you start to have all these emotions come up, that's where we go in and change it into a happy, and your mind will do it automatically once we've released all the negative emotions. And what happens is your brain will just create something like, mom's giving me a hug, she says she loves me. And you start doing that with all your memories, your mind starts to create a brand new life for you. And if you're doing something over and over again, let's say a relationship, okay? And it doesn't have to be a partnership. It can be a relationship with mom, dad, brother, sister, friends, people at work. And you have a certain amount of traumas. And it doesn't have to be heavy again. And they do something. And it reminds you of that back there, where I'm just going to give an example so everybody knows what I'm talking about. Mom is always belittling me. She's always, just putting me down. And you grow up, you're in a relationship, and in this relationship, this person does something to trigger you. And all of a sudden you flash back to the age you were at. Let's say you're 5 years old, mom has just said the most horrible thing to you, and you've never let it go. And have you ever had in your mind a trigger from somebody, and it's like you go back to wherever you go, and it's like you're there, you're right there, and you feel all the feelings. It's like you're 5 years old again, you're 10, you're whatever it is, and you can feel the feelings, and you see it in it, and you just it gets you just stirred up in a second. And yeah, it's great to blame the person that is triggered you, but most of the time with that person, it's really not about the person. It's that that person has literally triggered you back into something of your experience. So if we don't change that experience, we're going to keep getting triggered over and over and over again. Also, the other thing happens is when you change trauma, then you don't have people in your life that are going to continue to do whatever they're doing that's negative in your life. So if you have a pattern of picking somebody who is abusive in your life because your life was abusive, and you change all that history of yours, you will not be with a person that's abusive. Your mind won't let you, because you will not connect to that person anymore. But as long as you have the stories of whatever happened to you, your mind needs to connect to be at the same wavelength. And so if you want a better relationship, a better life, more money, better business, better whatever, you have to change this over here, which so many people say, I don't want to go. I do not want to go back there. There's no reason. It's in the past. I don't need to go back there. It's over. And believe me, I wish that was true. Because our unconscious mind is linear and it doesn't know time, that's exactly why you can literally go back to a memory and feel that you're there and it's real right now. It's not real right now, but it's real to the unconscious mind. So the unconscious mind feels it is real right now. And it stirs up all the same feelings, smells, taste. You see it again in your mind, you hear it, and you just start to get, has anybody just gotten themselves totally upset just by thinking something? It's actually not happening to you, but It's like the minute you go there, you're right there. You have all of it just real as it could possibly be. So that's why that statement doesn't really work when you say it's in the past and I don't want to go there. I don't need to go there. I agree. Who wants to go to the past? But it's important to change what you're holding that's traumatic. So there's some events there's some things that we can do. Like, I don't know how many of you saw all of the summit, but as you probably know, there's like a ton of different ways that we can do different things. Some of the common things for, sorry, just a minute. Some of the common things for us to do and use it when we are having traumatic events, for the most part, I would say if somebody has something traumatic that's happened to them, when they think of it, it gets anxiety stirred up. And as we saw in the ACE thing, the ACE study, is that there's a high tendency of depression. And depression is caused definitely by different traumas, but there's also another little factor I'd like to share is it's also suppressed anger. So if you're suffering from a lot of depression, check out your suppressed anger, because it's always there. Because we've been kind of taught as society that you don't get to get angry. It's not okay to be angry. And if you're angry, that nobody wants to be around that. So we kind of learn to suppress that. But there's a couple techniques that I wanted to share that you could just address right in the moment that you're feeling anxiety or fear or stress or sadness or anger. And it's really, there's a few different things, but I'm going to share just a quick one, and we'll go through a few. So if everybody can, I want you to hold your thumb, take your thumb, and you hold it. And your thumb actually stands for stress. And I just learned this technique. It's great. I love it. So anyway, you hold your thumb for stress. If you're feeling stressed, just hold it for about a minute or two, and you'll actually feel it just go down. The forefinger is fear. You just do the same thing. You hold it for 1 or 2 minutes till it goes down. Then you've got the middle finger, and that's anxiety. Okay, so we're going to hold that. The ring finger is sadness. Okay, and if you got anger, you point it down. Just kind of hold it down. Now, what if you have all of them or a few of them? You get to hold them together. And I like to hold 3 together, like fear, anxiety. You can hold, okay, so let's just do it. Stress and fear, you could do 2 of those. If you have anxiety, hold those. You just hold them. Sadness, once again, and little finger is anger. You can hold any of those. That's just one technique in the moment to bring yourself down. Okay, so what if some of you get really super anxious, and you've got whatever you've got in your past, and there's the anxiousness. Okay, so I'm going to show you another quick technique. I don't know how many of you know about peripheral vision, but I want you to focus on something and just focus on it. Okay, and as you focus on that, you let your eyes just kind of go all the way around, as far back as you can around. And you just do that every time you start to get anxious, and your body will immediately start to just kind of come down. You can do that 1,000,000 times if you need to bring your anxiousness down. A very famous one that we're going to get into a little bit more next week is tapping. So I do a lot of tapping with my clients with other modalities, but I use tapping as the main one. And tapping, I have found, for bringing and releasing and changing trauma for myself and for my clients, is tapping is the best, in my opinion. That doesn't mean it's the best for everybody, but I personally like it the best, because it allows the person not only to change the memory, they don't have to be re-traumatized. They can go to any place that's scary, horrible, you don't even understand, you don't remember. You can tap down that emotion, change the memory, and start to change your life pretty quickly. And that's what's happened to me. Some of you may know my story, some of you may not, and I'll just just share real quickly is, like I said, started going to therapy at 30, and well, let's just say I'm getting to 20 years later, and I'm still going to talk therapy at that moment. And we'd spent so much money, and I was just so upset. I was like, oh my gosh, are you kidding me? There's got to be something that works, because all I was doing is telling the story over and over and over again, and I wasn't getting better. And that's the problem. You can't tell the story over and over again and expect to get better. It just makes the neural pathways in our mind stronger. And that's kind of what I was talking about, the neural pathways. So what happens in our mind, if we have these neural pathways, okay, you keep thinking this thought and this trauma, and you keep thinking it over and over, and you can't forgive them, and you can't let it go, and it keeps going like this. You just make these things so strong, okay, and your brain is in a loop, and it's just going to keep doing it. What we want to do with whatever we use is we want to stop those neural pathways of the same thing over and over. How we can do that is many ways. Tapping is one. The two things I just showed you. Any kind of pattern interrupt that we can't keep going to the same story and telling it over and over. I don't want to offend anybody, but I'm going to share it for everyone. If you have something that's happened to you and you tell the story over and over again, it just actually makes it worse. And if you want to change things, then it's time to change it in the unconscious mind. So through tapping, we're able to actually go back and work with the unconscious mind and the body to literally change what the unconscious mind is holding, so that those neural pathways actually just kind of fall off. I love to share the tree metaphor here. So the tree metaphor is, okay, so we have a tree and we have all these branches, okay? And all these branches could be this thing that happened to you, and this thing and this thing, and because of that, you've got a whole bunch more branches. And you know what? You can go and you can take a few branches off, and that's helpful. But the thing is, if your problem is this, and you don't get to the root of what the problem is, those branches are going to find their way back in your little mind, and it's going to start creating things. So if you have anxiety, yes, you can go to somebody and you can work on the anxiety or the depression, and you may find relief. But if you don't get to the root, your unconscious mind is going to find another way to create another neural pathway back. So it's really important to get to the root. And as we get to the root, we're actually changing things, okay? And that's where real change happens, where your life starts to change. And I wish to heck 20 years ago, I would have found what I know in the last probably 10 years, because I didn't know then. And it's just amazing what we can do with our minds and change things so quickly. So just real quickly, I don't know how many of you know like TRE. That's another way that people can release trauma without going into the story. You're releasing it at a muscular level. We've got all kinds of tapping. You've got hypnosis. Let me think what here. And almost everyone that I know that was on the summit had some kind of way they found worked to change the mind and get some deep, deep healing. So that's what we want to do. And so next week, what we're going to do, I'm actually going to do a demonstration with somebody who has a traumatic event, so that you can kind of see how it works. And we're going to talk a little bit further and get a little bit more in depth about trauma. But this was kind of an introductory of just kind of understanding where you might be with the ACE study test, and how that may affect you in your life. You know, maybe it'll help you to see, you know, what's going on in your life, and maybe correlate it to some things that may need to be changed in your life. And the one thing I like to say is, you know, knowledge really is power. And when we know what's wrong with us, we can fix it, we can change it. But if we just always want to be in that place of running from our problems, or looking at what the root is, or maybe it's that scary thing you don't ever want to look at again, you don't even want to talk about, but that's the very thing that will actually change your life and heal you and help you to be better. And so I just really would like to encourage everyone to maybe just kind of look at your life and see what's going on, where you're having some trouble, and if it does connect to something in the past. And if it's connecting to some kind of trauma. You know, I feel more comfortable just sharing my own experience instead of my clients, but I would say it's the same for them as well. I have went to some very, very, very horrific memories. And yet, when I went there, I was able to change them pretty darn quickly. And to me, if I spend 20 years and $500,000 in therapy and somebody can help me in a short amount of time change the memory and I'm happy, it's worth it. And that's what's so amazing today is that we can do that. So there's incredible amount of hope in changing what's happened to you. And, you know, a long time ago, we were all kind of told, you know, whatever happened to you, you're just going to have to live with it and you're just going to have to deal with it. And that's just not the case. We don't have to live with it. We get to be happy and we get to have a happy life. And I'm going to share one more thing, and then if anybody had any questions, I would just like to ask you, you don't have to answer, but are you doing what you want to do in your life? Okay. I don't know why it's bringing tears, but I'd like to encourage you to look at what's in your life, what you haven't looked at. Because when you do, your mind, you will create what you want to be doing. And it won't matter what your family said you could or couldn't do. It won't matter what you think you can't do, because your mind will change that. And that is actually what has happened to me. I started cleaning up my past. And then I wasn't thinking this, you know, it's like, yes, I want to help people in that kind of way. But what my mind started doing is just creating these amazing opportunities for me that I never even dreamed I'd be doing. And it's just because I was cleaning up all my crap. It's not that I don't still have crap. Everybody still does, you know, until the day you die, I believe. But I just started gaining all these opportunities of things I love to do. And, you know, I had a couple people that were incredibly demeaning about what they thought I could do for my life. And yes, I'm doing it later in my life, but I chose to stay home and raise my kids. But I'm having this career after my kids have left. And it was actually before this career thing kind of took off and I actually found tapping. I was literally told, and I'm going to tell you this because, well, I'm being very honest here, but I'll just share it, is my husband and I had lost all of our businesses in San Diego. And this was a while ago. It was like 2005, 6, whatever it was. And that it was a hard time. But literally, because we had lost our businesses, I was told by somebody in our family that the rest of our lives we would have to go work at a retail store and make $10 an hour and live in a small apartment. And I'm just like, are you kidding me? Seriously? Because, you know, in my view, you know, losing that, which would be considered a trauma, I think that's everybody's biggest fear, is losing everything. Literally, it was actually the greatest blessing because I believe it saved my husband and I's relationship. I actually have a career that I love now because we lost everything. I wouldn't have had it. And it actually kind of got us on the right path of getting maybe a better way of getting help. And so every trauma happens, yes, but it doesn't have to ruin your life. It can be your stepping stone to your greatness, to what you love. And it isn't just me. It isn't just that person over there. It's you. You can overcome your traumas. You can overcome anything you happen. I believe that anything that happens to you, there's a reason and you can overcome it. And if you choose to, you will. And sometimes we think to ourselves, oh my gosh, I don't know what to do. I don't know where to get help. I need help, but I don't know what to do. And that's, you know, where you start reaching out to people. You know, I could go down the list, but there you can also look on the summit because you bought the package. That's why you're here. Is there, I don't know, we had 23. They have 23 different ideas. And then we had last year, and there's even more ideas on there of how you can address trauma. There's so many people that do help you. And that's why I love doing what I was doing with the trauma, is because we were trying to reach out to as many different ideas as we could that could help people, because not everything really registers with everybody. You know, like I can say I love this and you can say I don't like it at all, and that's fine. But there's just so many ways to get help, and you may have to search out a few things you like. So I think that'll be it for today, but we're going to have a demonstration next week of someone the next time, of someone having trauma. We will do a tapping, doing a short little tapping session, and I'll kind of do some more introductory information in the beginning. So does anyone have a question that I could answer at all? Okay, you can unmute yourself.
Okay, my question is, when I remember something, and not really horrible, just some everyday stuff that was not particularly nice, I do not go there like all the way. I do not feel, like you said, you get right into the memory, but I do not. I sort of remember, but I'm not feeling. I sort of know that it's hurt. I sort of know that this memory hurts, but I do not necessarily feel hurt. It
Okay.
makes it harder to. I'm trying to tap, but I'm not connecting. Okay.
So what you can do, the reason why you may not be feeling anything, and that's totally fine, you just tap with what you know. So you tap with the knowing, you tap with the hurt, whatever you know, because a lot of times we learn to shut off those feelings. We don't feel them. No way. We're not going there. But it doesn't mean you can't tap and change it. Just go with what you know, because see, most of us we're all different. Some of us are very visual. Some of us are feeling. Some of us are auditory. So we have to go with who we, like if you were to tell me, I go tapping, I go that memory, but I don't see it, just kind of a knowing, that's okay, because that's how you're processing it. So you just go with what your unconscious mind is showing you. But there also, I will tell you, your mind has it all, okay? So it has the feeling somewhere. It's just blocked it off. And that's normal. I'm not the most feeling person as far as when I start tapping. Like, I don't cry a lot in my sessions, but I change a lot. So yes, maybe I should cry a lot more, but I don't. And I think that's just something I learned to do, is kind of, you know. So, but on the other hand, I'm a very feeling person. So I don't know how to, you know, you can be very, you know, kind and compassionate and feeling, but parts of us, we do seal off. So I think tapping just gets us to where we need to be. That's all I can say. And if you just go where what you know, that's all you need to know. And if you have memories, okay, so so the thing with tapping too, and then I also have some techniques I can also help with that, but let's say that you go to a memory and it's like, you know, something bad happened, it hurts, it feels bad, but you know there's something kind of bad there, but you don't remember it. That's your mind suppressing it. But what I found is two different things, is the more you tap on it, your mind can start to reveal it in layers, like little pieces of it till it comes together and you have that aha moment. There's also a couple of ways that I also have a couple, it's very simple. It's just a different way to talk to the subconscious mind, and the subconscious mind will tell you what's there by asking certain questions. And it's really, it's not re-traumatizing. It's just your unconscious mind giving you information, and then you keep tapping as you're going with it. And it's just a very easy way to get to the root of things. And I use that quite a bit, and I think it's pretty good to do that as well. So is there anything else? Or okay, is there anybody else? All right. Well, I would like.
Can I ask one more question? It's not exactly on the topic, but maybe you can comment still. I tend to start doing something, make some progress, and then I stop, and then I know I should be like tapping more, going forward, doing something more, but I just do not. Like procrastination sets in, and I keep stopping instead of keeping going.
Well, there's always a reason for that, for procrastination. There's a part of you that doesn't want to do it, first of all. And it's probably your conscious mind, like, I got to do this. I want to do this. I'm supposed to do this. And there is a reason you're not wanting to do it. So there's a part of you that's saying, I'm not doing that. So that's the part, or something that will do. So do you do tapping? I take it. Is it?
Yeah, occasionally. Yeah. Yes.
Okay, so there's questions that you can literally ask yourself. It's what we call an art of change, but it's like an intake that you can literally do on yourself, and you can ask certain questions, and then you can kind of work on the memories that might have to do with you procrastinating. Like, let me give you, for example, I have a client who has procrastination, and what we came to find out was he grew up with a family that the mother was very strict about cleaning. You have to keep everything perfectly clean, make sure your bed's, all this kind of thing. And so when he grew up, he just didn't want to clean. He was like, I really need to do this. I really need to clean my office. I really need to, organize here. I need to do this. But the part of him was just like rebelling against mom. It's just like, no, I don't want to do this. So it can be as simple as that. I'm just giving an example. So, but just getting to the root of it, if you go to Fast Rate of Tea or utaptics/utaptics, they have an art of change, I think, on their website you can get, and you can start asking yourself questions that can help you to figure it out if you need that. So, and there's just simple questions you can ask yourself, like, how do I know? I don't know what you're procrastinating in, but see what possibly could connect to something in the past that you didn't want to do that was similar. So, okay. I do a lot of child work, so I don't want to get too much into that with the trauma work, but I do a lot of childhood work, because I believe that everything the problems that we have as adults is really based there. And if you change the root of it, which usually goes back there, then things change, because there's not that part of you that's fighting you doing something. So, all right, everybody. Thanks for being here. And if you missed it, you'll have the recording. And thanks a lot. And we'll see you, I believe it is in September, for part 2.